Today I'm going to tell you the story of losing Bill Gates as a client. So the year was 2019, and I was running a lead generation agency called Credo, which I successfully exited in September of 2022. People could fill out their information and say they were looking for an agency. So they would tell us their name, give us their contact info, their website, the service they were interested in, that sort of thing. And that would then pipe through into a Slack channel. So I'm just like looking at it one day, probably on my phone or something like that. And I see one come through that it was woman's name and then at gatesnotes.com. And the website that they put in was gatesnotes.com. Now, on that site, we got a lot of spam. We got a lot of people just submitting the form to see what happened. We got a lot of low quality stuff. We got a lot of link builders trying to get us to buy links from them. And so I was always a little bit dubious about this. And I was like, is this really real? And so I go and I put in the site and it's Bill Gates's personal blog. And I was like, there's no way, because we had people submitting, big like multinational websites and that sort of stuff. And it wasn't actually a legitimate lead. And then I went and I searched the person and I found them on LinkedIn and it was like managing editor at gatesnotes.com. And I was like, okay, this seems crazy, but like it looks legit. And then I looked and they had scheduled a call. And so I pinged my sales guy and I was like, hey man, I think Bill Gates' personal site just came through and we're talking with them next week. And he's like, awesome. And so, next week we hop on a call with them and they seem great. And, we know what they're looking for. They're looking for someone to migrate their website to a new platform, redesign it, and also do SEO and content for them. And I was like, well, this is perfect. This is exactly what we do. I'm like, you'll be in good hands with my sales guy. This was probably fall of 2019. And we were in the middle of kind of a business model pivot. We had been investing that whole year to build out a new platform that we ended up using to basically make introductions between clients and agencies. And so I was focused on that, right? But cash had been kind of bleeding and we hadn't really been selling in new people for a number of months. And so cash was getting pretty tight, I'll be totally honest. And then a couple of weeks later, like we hit a big cash crunch and I let my sales guy go. I needed to kind of dive back in and right size the business because otherwise, like we were going to go bankrupt. I mean, we literally had 2 weeks worth of cash in the bank. And so I took a pay cut. My business partner took a pay cut and we let our sales guy go. And then I jumped into HubSpot, which was the CRM that we were using at the time. And I was looking through and I found this deal and I looked at it and he had never followed up with her. He had never sent a follow-up message. Hey, I'd love to introduce you to so-and-so and so-and-so. I forget why we hadn't just gone ahead and done that because it was usually our process to do that. But, I trusted that he was doing these follow-ups and he hadn't done it. And he hadn't done it for Bill Gates. And I was like, oh my gosh, a couple of things. Number one, if he's not doing it for Bill Gates, who else is he not doing it for? And is that part of why, things are feeling so hard right now? Like I had taken my eye off the ball. Secondly, I was like, what do I have to do? I have to go get Bezos now, like to get the richest guy in the world, right? Musk wasn't really a thing at that point. I'm like, man, I got to get Bezos or, Zuckerberg was like number 3. I was like, how am I going to outperform this one, right? I mean, all joking aside, the real thing was he hadn't followed up with Bill Gates. And so like, who else was he not following up with? And so I learned a couple of very important lessons that day. The lessons I learned were, one, if it's a super important deal to your business, to your agency, even if you have a salesperson, even if you have like a qualifier or something like that, you need to still be involved in that until you're up to, honestly, probably millions a year in revenue. I mean, the agency that I worked for in New York back in the day, Distilled, I remembered when we'd have big deals come through, one of the founders, the CEO or one of the VPs would hop on that call as well, just to give them that like personal attention and make sure, even though we had very, very capable salespeople, to make sure that this deal was going to get done, right? That the client was being taken care of. And honestly, I hadn't done that. I had taken my eye off the ball. I wasn't actually looking at the numbers. I wasn't making sure that follow-ups were being done. Didn't have tight operations to make sure that all these deals had been followed up with and make sure that things were happening. I just kind of trusted that it was happening, right? So really what I did was I abdicated, not delegated. And that came back to bite me. I had done it in the past and I've done it since as well, but I've learned that lesson now that don't abdicate these super important things. Delegate them to someone who is capable. Make sure that they're doing their job. But if something is really important to your business, it's an important deal, it's a big deal, something like that, you still need to be involved in that deal because you're the one that they trust. You have all of the experience. You're the one that can make exceptions, right? As the owner, your salesperson might be like, no, we work X, Y, and Z way. And you could be like, actually, if you're paying us enough, we'll build out a custom thing for you, right? Like you're the entrepreneur, you're the one that thinks creatively and you're the one that can make that call, not the salesperson. So make sure that you stay involved in these important deals because at the end of the day, it's your business, not their business. To your salesperson, it's a job. To you, it's like your heart and soul, right? So this is my story of losing a deal with Bill Gates. I've still not done a deal with Bezos or Musk or Zuckerberg or any of those yet, but At the end of the day, you live and you learn. There's another important lesson learned. So take my lessons and apply it to yours. And I hope it helps you make a lot of money. All right, y'all. See you later.